Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our cozy little corner of the internet. I'm Pen and today I'm reading the 1000 subscriber special, Two Teens and Their Justice, written by me. This is a long one, I only just finished it like half an hour ago. Published it to AO3, all that stuff, and gosh it took forever. It is 8,909 words and just wow, that's a lot. Anyway, here is the summary. Izuku was promised he would be useful, but ended up being kidnapped by the League of Villains. Izuku finds a chance to escape and take Shinso with him, but in the process he leaves the other children behind, promising Shinso he will get them back. Now, Izuku is a vigilante with Shinso and finds Aizawa, who helps them after almost dying. There's a slight trigger warning for slight gore, so I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into this. Thank you all again for the support, and let's get in. Izuku woke up with the feeling of cloth on his face. It was damp and heavy, slightly sliding off his face, but not enough to help him be able to see, just enough to feel awkward. Izuku tries to steady his breathing as he wiggles around the chair that he's attached to. "Well, looks like the new catch is awake," a voice says from the darkness. Izuku squeaks quietly as he tries to shake the blindfold off, water dripping down his face and into his mouth, making Izuku's chubs more alarmed. The voice comes closer to Izuku and footsteps being the only thing Izuku can hear other than his sobs. "Don't be scared, child," the voice said mysteriously as Izuku tries to get his hands and feet free from the ropes binding him to the chair. Izuku tries to speak, but his words are stopped by the gag in his mouth, making it impossible to speak properly. The voice laughs at Izuku's struggle, taking his time to observe the young teen's panic before closing the gap between the two and taking the teen's blindfold off. Izuku's eyes widen when he sees a young adult with baby blue hair standing just staring at him with a weird, wicked smile on his face. Izuku is just about to attempt to speak up, but the boy gets a harsh slap to the face. "Don't speak unless spoken to," the man says as he retracted his hands back. Izuku shuts his mouth, closed over the gag, forcing himself not to speak. The man in front of him takes the blindfold off and nods and looks down at him. The man looks down at him with a crazed smile as his crazed smile comes back to life. He stares at Izuku for a solid 20 seconds before he takes a step backward and takes something shiny in the dim light overhead that Izuku is only now registering. He was in a room with no windows, the walls covered in mossy green that was mixed in with the regular shades of red bricks held up that made up the environment. The young boy shakes as he sees the man holding the knife and bringing it closer to Izuku. Izuku has to hold back sounds as he sees the knife resting against his shoulder. It still hurt badly from when Kachan, as Izuku called the boy, left an imprint on his shoulder after a harsh day of scolding the other always done. As the knife cuts into his already burnt shoulder, Izuku can't help but let out a soft whimper. Knives were the one thing that he had never been attacked with. One of the few things he had never been attacked with. Kachan and his lackeys knew that there would be no way to justify bringing a knife into school like they had been able to do with using their quirks. The blue-haired man's eyes sharpened above him, as if he wasn't sure if the boy's whimpering was desired or not. Izuku shuts his eyes tightly and tenses his shoulders as he whimpers, expecting another slap to the face. But when Izuku doesn't receive one, his body relaxes, even if it's just a tiny bit, as he looks back over to the knife, only to see it resting on his shoulder by itself. His eyes widen as even if it's just a tiny bit, as he looks back over to his shoulder to see the knife standing in his shoulder by itself. His eyes widen as he looks back up to the blue-haired man. A small strand of hope in his eyes when the man bends down. When the man bends down, so Izuku's face, so he's in Izuku's face and smiles softly before taking it out of his shoulder. Izuku knew he shouldn't have let his guard down, but the man's soft eyes were enough to make him stop for just a second. And now Izuku's screams filled the room as the man grabbed one of Izuku's fingers. Izuku felt a tingling in his index finger at first. It wouldn't be too far of a stretch to say it was his imagination, but then it turned into blistering fire, a flame that couldn't compare even to Kachan's explosions. It all happened so quickly. First the tingling, then the burning, and finally an indescribable pain. A pain that felt even worse than the flame, flooding throughout his entire finger. The area quickly cooled, the coolness being welcomed for a second, as the fiery pain stopped, but it soon became overwhelming. The boy looked down at his finger, only to see the last part of it turning to ash and disappearing right in front of his eyes. His finger detached from his hand. The boy lets out as the last of his finger disappears. The adult smiled wickedly at him as he let out a soft chuckle. You know, the man started, taking a second to let out the last of his laughter. I normally wouldn't let anyone scream, but your eyes give me just enough entertainment to let it slip by. He takes a deep breath and leans into Izuku. His smile drops quickly as Izuku stares into his eyes. Don't let it happen again. You might not get so lucky next time. His voice was deep, and his red eyes gaze into Izuku's soul. All Izuku can do is nod. When the man finally steps back, Izuku looks over to where his finger used to be. The stump was throbbing and blood was pouring out of it faster than he would be able to recover. At this point, Izuku's head was sore and throbbing in sync with his finger. Izuku doesn't know what happens after that. Maybe he passed out, because the next thing he knows, he's in another room and a small group of children surrounding him. It couldn't have been more than 4 people, and only one seemed to be around the same age as him. He slowly gets up, looking down at his finger, just in case it turned out to be a big fever dream. Turns out, his finger is actually gone, and the stump is covered by some cloth. Izuku, internally hoping the cloth was clean, looks up to see the 4 children. The younger 3 seemed to be ranged between 8 and 10, but the older one had gravity-defying purple hair and deep eye bags that made it seem like he was the one taking care of the younger 3, a protective arm separating Izuku from the rest. Hi, Izuku said softly, as he looked at everyone, quickly waving his hand, before realizing children shouldn't be seeing his dismembered finger, and put it back down, hiding it behind his back. The hair gravity-defying teen sighs and stands up and walks over to Izuku, quickly cornering him against the wall. Why are you here? His voice doesn't give Izuku a choice to not answer. It was in a demanding voice, one that echoed throughout the room, paired with eyes that could kill. Izuku curls into a ball instinctively, letting out a soft sob. Izuku doesn't look back up at the threatening teen. The room was silent for a few seconds. Only Izuku's sobs filled up the air when a small voice called out behind the purple teen. He's scared, Hito. And who knows what he just went through with Shigaraki. He's already missing a finger and it's only his first session. The girl's voice was soft, Izuku only being able to pick up on her voice from the years of listening out for Kachan's footsteps. At this, Hito sighed and stepped back, not far, but enough for Izuku to look up and not immediately be faced with his purple eyes. Despite the purple-haired teen being slightly further away, Izuku was still too scared to answer his questions, scratching his arms. He looks around the room. 5 things you can see, he says softly, eyes moving around as in softly saying a few things out loud. 4 things you can touch, he says just as softly, his eyes moving down to himself. The younger children looked at the green-haired teen confused, quickly walking up to the older teen. The kids pushed him closer to Izuku with a pleading look in their eye. Hito looked at the kids and then back down at Izuku and sighed. He knew how to calm someone down from a panic attack, but it looked like the new victim of Shigaraki's torture was handling it quite well. Not to mention, the green-haired teen was probably scared of him at this point, but he could never say no to the kids. So he walks a little closer, hands up in a non-threatening position, and lowers himself down to the teen's level. "Hey," he says softly as he crouched down in front of Izuku. Izuku's eyes jolted up, panic filling them once again. The purple-haired teen sat down on the floor, making himself the same height as Izuku. "I won't hurt you. I just want to know how you got here," Izuku said in an almost Hito said in an almost calming voice, in his most calming voice he could manage, and pulled Izuku's arms away from his skin to stop him from scratching himself. Izuku stays in the daze for a moment as he tries to remember what happened. The last thing he remembered was he was on his way home from school after getting beaten up by Kachan and his lackeys, and there it was. He was dragged into the side of the underpass before being knocked on top of the head. I was on my way home," he started softly, as Hito looked at him in the eyes. "I think I was knocked out, but I remember being told I was useful." Izuku's eyes slightly lightened at the memory before they dulled back down. "But I'm a slave here, aren't I?" he said softly as he looks back down to the ground and fiddles with his hands. All Hito could do was sigh. The teen must not have much going on for him if he was happy about being told he would be useful. "I get it," Hito said. "We were all told that," he said as he kept holding Izuku's hands in his own. When Izuku looked up, he saw small tears in the purple-haired teen's eyes. "You have a bad quirk too, don't you?" Hito asked softly. To say that Izuku cried would be an understatement of a lifetime. Izuku never said that he was quirkless, but the others knew that he was just as unlucky as them, if not more. After a little while of Izuku crying into Hito's chest, Izuku sniffed one last time before pulling out of the hug. "Thank you," he says softly, as he looked at the other teen in the eyes, the smallest trace on a smile on his face, just enough to make the other kidnapped children relax. Hito nodded before the door opened. Izuku, being the only one facing the door, crawled backwards from Shigaraki. It didn't take the other kids long to figure out why he was scared. They knew that only 2 people from the outside came into that room. This time, they were just unlucky. Shigaraki walked closer to the group of children, an evil smile on his face as he stood with his arms just out of arm's reach. Hito quickly stood up and stood in front of all of them, a scowl on his face as he growled. The baby blue-haired man didn't say anything as he pulled out a muzzle from behind his back. Hito stepped forward and looked up at Shigaraki and nodded, as the adult put the muzzle on his face. Izuku was frozen in fear as he saw the purple-haired teen timidly follow the adult into another room. Just as the door was closing, Izuku jumped up from where he sat and started to run over to the boy. He may not have known him very well or for very long, but if he could save someone, then he would gladly take the pain. Shigaraki paused at the door as he heard footsteps run towards him. Izuku stopped just behind the two, his body shaking like a leaf, but still standing, and ready to fight. Shigaraki just laughs as he stares down at Izuku. "You're a quirkless child. How do you think you're going to fight me, an adult with a quirk meant to kill?" The room went silent except for the smaller kids gasping. Hito stared at Izuku with shock and shook his head, trying to tell the other teen that it wasn't worth the fight. Instead of Izuku backing down, though, he shook his head back at Hito before glaring back at Shigaraki. I don't care," Izuku exclaimed loudly as he snatches Hito away from the adult and sets the teen behind him. Izuku let out a growl, like he had seen heroes do all his life. To Izuku's credit though, it half worked. Shigaraki was startled for just a second, just long enough for Izuku to push Shigaraki down to the floor and run with Hito up the stairs and out of the front door. Hito tries to pull Izuku back, but he has a surprising amount of strength in his tiny body. "What about the kids?" Hito yelled at Izuku after he got the muzzle off. But Izuku just shook his head. It was the dead of night, but at least there was still someone in Musutafu. "If we go back to save them, we'll all die," Izuku said sternly as he continued to run. Hito let out a choked sob, but manages to pull away from the other teen, making them both stop. "I can't just leave them," Hito exclaims as he tries to turn back. Izuku just grabbed his arms and took a deep breath before responding. "We'll save them later. We just need to get away for now." His voice was just as stern as before, dragging Hito into a hug. "They'll be fine," Izuku said without a waver in his voice. He knew he would save them. Even if he couldn't be a hero, he would save those kids. He knew it. There was a crash from somewhere in the distance, and Izuku's head jerked up quickly before pulling Hito into an alleyway. The green-haired teen pulls the other teen by the arm and leads them behind a large dumpster. It was less than 5 seconds after they got into their hiding spot when they heard Shigaraki's voice along with another man, one with a slightly distorted voice. They seemed to be out of breath. They probably ran to find the other two teens. Izuku had consciously slowed down his breathing and gestured for Hito to do the same. It took a full minute of controlled breaths before the voices went away and the boys could pant as loudly as they needed to. Hito collapsed against the wall, catching back his breath, still shaking slightly, but the adrenaline was quickly leaving his body. Izuku took one last deep breath as he peeked out from the side of the dumpster, relaxing when he didn't see anyone coming. "They're gone," he lets out with a breath as he relaxes on the wall next to Hito. "You know, I never caught your name. What was it?" His voice was soft and calm, filled with relief. "Shinso Hitoshi. What's yours?" Izuku smiled softly at the question. "I'm Midoriya Izuku." The two lead into each other subconsciously, the cold winter's night making the two of them huddle closer for any warmth they could get. "It's not safe here," Izuku said after a few moments of being in each other's arms. "I know that there's a beach nearby my place that we can camp out and no one will find us," he says just as softly as he gets up, Shinso leaning on him for support. After the two of them get to their feet, Shinso let go of Izuku to stand on his own. The purple-haired teen sighs as he takes in the night air for the first time in who knows how long. "Shouldn't we find a hero?" Shinso asks softly as they walk out of the alleyway. Izuku just shakes his head as he starts making his way through the night. He knew most of Musutafu quite well, so it was just about walking around until he recognized one of the street names. "If you were in there for as long as I think you were, then you're probably pronounced dead a long time ago, and I don't know if the police would even agree to take on a case like mine." Izuku cuts himself off when he sees a recognizable street. The two take a turn at the next corner before Izuku continues. "As you know, I'm quirkless, and you probably got a villainous quirk based on if the way that Shigaraki was treating you was any clue. So, no one will be willing to help us." The green-haired teen takes a deep breath, almost like he's resetting his brain. "I've done some research on what to do if I couldn't be a hero, and by law I can't be a vigilante, since that means using your quirk to do a heroic act without a license, meaning I can't get into legal trouble. So if we become vigilantes, or at least I do, then we can save the kids." Izuku enters speech with another turn as they reach a road that has a clear view of the ocean. Shinso sighs as he rubs his temples. "As long as we save the kids, then I'm fine with it." The green-haired teen nods. "I've already done some basic training, and I'm sure I could teach you the basics. We have a long way to go, but we'll make it to be vigilantes within the next month." The two had now reached the beach. Shinzo looked a little confused about how they would survive here, but Izuku just gave him a small smile before walking into the never-ending pile of what looked like to be trash. The purple-haired teen just sighed and followed Izuku into the mess of metal parts and old appliances. It had been a little over 3 weeks since they escaped from their captors when Izuku and Shinzo went on their first patrol around Musatafu. It was still winter, but it was the later part of winter, so it was going to start warming up soon. However, that was the last thing the two teens were concerned about when they saw the first petty crime, an attempted mugging. Izuku was the first to hear it, a muffled scream from a couple of alleys away. The small teen's head picked up as soon as he heard the sound and ran to it, leaving a very confused Shinzo to catch up behind him. As Izuku came to a stop, he put out his hand with one finger to stop the other teen from coming too close, the single finger saying how many criminals they had to face off against. As Shinzo arrived next to him, he crouched and looked at Izuku, who was analysing his opponent's moves, something Izuku had a habit of doing. After a few seconds of analysing the victim and the villain, Izuku gave the other teen a thumbs up and a shaky smile as he jumped down onto the villain's head, making a sickening crack as he landed. If Izuku had been any heavier, he probably would have killed the guy. So, just in case, Izuku checked the pulse of the perpetrator, visibly relaxing when he felt a steady pulse from him. Shinzo jumped down a few seconds later, making sure Izuku gave him another thumbs up before the teen jumped down. The victim seemed to be almost in no shock as Shinzo helped him up. "Thank you," she said quickly as she pulls out her phone and to call the police. She must have met other vigilantes before, since neither of them had uttered a single word, and she called the cops. Had uttered a single word to get her to call the cops. Shinzo smiled softly at the girl, only the bottom half of his face being shown, since his mask covered the top half. Izuku had an almost identical outfit to Shinzo. The only difference is that it had purple trim around the otherwise black outfit, and Izuku had a green trim. Shinzo turned around just in time to see Izuku zip-tying the criminal's hands together before standing up and stretching. Once Izuku realized he was being watched by Shinzo, he quickly turned a light blush on his face. Shinzo just chuckled as the teen in green had a mini meltdown, covering his face slightly. The peace was sadly ruined when they heard sounds of the police off in the distance, making both Shinzo and Izuku go white in the face. The two teens had known the cops would get to the scene quickly, since they were only a few blocks away from the station, but this was quick even taking that into account. Izuku was the first to shake himself out of it, quickly grabbing Shinzo and guiding him to the fire escape. Shinzo managed to get his senses back as Izuku started pushing him over to the escape, and started to climb up the fire escape. And as Shinzo started to climb the fire escape, Izuku grabbed a pebble and threw it with surprising amount of accuracy at one of the police officer's shoes, making the officer stop for a second as a small rock flew into their view. Shinzo was already up on the roof by the time Izuku started his ascent, Izuku not checking behind him as he climbed the escape. There was a short yell as the officer's foot got hit, the rock seemingly having come from a dark corner with no one in it. Izuku was almost on the roof by the time the officers shined their torches on the teens, and by the time the officer had gotten close enough to attempt to tase one of the climbing teen, Izuku was rolling onto the roof. The teens quickly ran from the crime scene, leaving the officers to arrest the man that Izuku had almost killed. That happened another 3 times over the next 4 hours, until they decided they would need to go to sleep so they could wake up in time for their part-time jobs that they managed to get. Shota Aizawa was sleeping in his sleeping bag as the Shuns completed a quiz, if only for the sake of the man getting more sleep when his phone rang. The man groaned as he managed managed to pull out the phone out of his pocket while in the sleeping bag, only to be faced with a contact that never resulted in anything but extra work for him. As he answered the phone, a just-as-tired voice rang out through the other side. Aizawa, I know you have classes right now, but once you're done, I need you to come down to the police station. We have 2 new vigilantes. They look to be in middle school based on the reports of the people that were saved. Shoda sighed as he quickly agreed before sitting up, when he saw one of his top students, Nedre Hado, looking at him with a confused look. Aizawa-sensei, did you get caught into the police station after class again? She softly asked as she placed her papers on his desk, and she made her way around the said desk before crouching down. Now, Shoda would never admit this, not even to his closest friends, but he does have a soft spot for a few of his students. Nedre Hado, being a first-year student, was one of them. He nodded softly as he reached up for his cup of coffee that was still on the desk. Yeah, something about some new vigilantes, just some kid trying to play hero is all Shoda said before laying back down in his sleeping bag. Nedre nods before sitting on the floor next to Aizawa, taking a deep breath like she was trying to gather the courage to say something. Aizawa-sensei, there's something I need to tell you, the girl said softly as she fiddled with her hands and looked away from her teacher. Shoda just sighs as she sits next to him. Problem child? He starts, opening his eyes to look at the young girl. If it's something related to the new vigilantes, then you'll need to come with me to the station after school, as well as tell me now. Shoda's tone was a little harsh, but he knew that Nedre hated to put herself out there. It would be something that he would need to drill into her with his time as her teacher. The teen nodded before moving so she was out of sight of her classmates, and at this point Shoda was starting to get a little concerned about her. But he waits. He just waits as she gathers up the courage to talk, even sitting up and unzipping the top half of his sleeping bag to show that he was listening and taking this seriously. Well, she starts off softly, taking another deep breath as she recomposed herself. I was attacked by a small-time villain last night. I was just grabbing some nose spray since my nose was really blocked last night, and I was dragged into an alleyway. He said he only had a knife on him, but I was so scared to act since we hadn't gotten our provisional licenses yet, and I didn't want him to be arrested for vigilantism. The girl takes another deep breath before continuing her story, trying to calm herself down from the memory. Then, just as he was about to hurt me, a young boy in a black and green suit came from the rooftops. He looked even younger than us, and they didn't look to be any of the vigilantes we had covered in class. So I thought they might be the one the officers over the phone were talking about. Her voice got a little bit more stable as she continued, feeling more at ease talking about her saviors than her attacker. Shoda sighed as he rubbed the bridge of his nose. And what about the other kid? He asked as he looked back at his phone to see another message that Tsukauchi had sent to him. But he'd check that later. In the split second that it took for him to glance at his phone, Nedre started to talk again. The other one was a little bit taller, but he was still only about my height, and his outfit was all black and purple. The tops of their faces were both covered, but the kid in green had some freckles covering his cheeks. Neither of them said a word, but I knew what to do. So after thanking them, I quickly left and called the police. The adult just nodded as he listened. He knew that Tsukauchi probably had asked her all the routine questions after an attack, but should bring her to the station after class, just to make sure. The teacher nodded as he got up from the floor, sighing as he processed what his student had just told him. He turned his head as Nedre was getting up. You're going to come with me after class, he said in a firm tone. That just as much as he wanted to be softer with his students, he had a reputation to uphold. The teen seemed to understand her teacher's stance and nodded before making her way back to her chair, leaving the finished quiz on Shoda's desk, God, Shota was not looking forward to tonight's patrol. Shota was running across the rooftops, keeping an eye out for both villains and the kids that Tsukauchi had decided he had to look out for. He had been looking for the kids for about a month at this point, and he still hadn't even gotten a glimpse of them yet. As Man was thinking, his ears picked up a distant shout, and he quickly turned on his heels and started running towards the general area. Hopefully he could pinpoint where the attack was by the time he got to the area and prayed it wasn't too late. The pro was almost there when almost where the screen was, just pinning down the pro hero was almost where the screen was, just pinning down the alleyway, when the same voice let out another scream. At least the civilian isn't dead, was all that Shota could think, but a part of him knew that it meant something worse was happening. As he was getting closer, he could hear heavy pants and someone talking. The voice was young and filled with anger. Shota couldn't help but ask himself why someone that young was out so late. The adult makes it to the edge quickly, taking a quick second to glance over the scene. 3 civilians, 4 villains. 2 of the villains had mutant-type quirks. One looked to be part tiger, and the other one looked to have sharp spikes coming out of random parts of his body, while the other 2 didn't have any visible representations of their quirks. Shota jumped down quickly as he cancelled one of the villains that didn't have a mutant quirk. He seemed to have a large butcher knife in his hand on him as he looked angrily at the younger 2 people. Wait, how young were they? Shota shook his head as he tried to get rid of the thoughts. As one of the kids noticed his appearance, making the child look away and make himself vulnerable to an attack. The armed villain that Shota hadn't taken away the quirk from, lurched at the boy in black and green. Thankfully, the pro had enough reaction time to use his capture scarf and wrap it around the weapon nearing the boy's chest, stopping just before he could pierce the boy. It was now that the villains took notice of him. Maybe the other villain had a mental quirk or a weak quirk that he didn't notice disappear, but either way, all four of them will now turn to him. Shit, it's a race ahead, said a voice from behind the villains as the non-injured boy pulls the other people into the shadows. Hopefully the kid had some sort of healing quirk. Shota would probably be able to ignore the illegal quirk use if he did. Shota sighed as he yanked the weapon away from the villain that was just attacking the young boy, making said villain stumble forward. The pro took advantage of this as he ran forward and bringing his knee to the face of the knife holder. The other villains looked around. The 2 of them froze, watching the scene in front of them with wide eyes. Quickly knocking the first man out, Shota turns around to use his scarf on the 2 villains in front of him. Quickly knocking out the first man, Shota turns around and uses his scarf to slam the 2 villains in front of him into each other, leaving the pro with just one man holding a gun in shaky hands. I will use the gun, the man shouted as Shota pointing the weapon at the hero. Shota scoffs as he retracts his capture weapon back to his body and glares at the villain and activates his quirk. The villain jolts back, his quirk disappearing. What's happening? He shouts, panicking as he hugs his own body, dropping the gun in the process. A moderate self-temperature regulation quirk. He might be doing it subconsciously as it's a little cold tonight, might be thought to be quirkless. A voice whispers out from the dark corner as he saw the civilians go into. Cutting itself off as Shota turned to look at the source of the whisper. The voice was just loud enough to be heard over the laboured breathing of the villain. The two were frozen for a second, Schroeder turning his head to the kid in black and green to see the kid in black and green come out from the shadows. The kid wore a black and green suit that looked a little too familiar, but Schroeder would figure that out later. Right now, he needed to defeat this villain. Schroeder turned his head back to the leftover villain, getting back into a fighting position. The child in black and green following closely behind him. Who are you? The villain called out as he continued to hug himself from the cold, as if the child was right about his assessment. Schroeder just laughed coldly as he relaxed slightly into his pose. You don't need to know, the kid said ominously as he took a step closer before taking a knife out of his back pocket. Thanks to Racerhead for saving the day, he said with a small smile as he briefly glanced back at the hero. I'll deal with this villain, just make sure my friend and the other civilian are okay. That's all he says before he rushes and hits the butt of the knife into the villain's head. Schroeder laughs at how easily the kid takes down the villain as he turns to the dark corner, letting his eyes adjust to the dim lighting. The pro's breath hitches as he sees another child covered in blood. It wasn't that visible on the black clothing, but he could still tell the child was bleeding a lot. Fuck, he says softly as he gently walks over to the injured child, noting the other civilian wasn't hurt at all, with his hands in the air. As the child flinches at Schroeder's footsteps, the pro speaks quietly. It's okay, kid, he says as he crouches down in front of the injured child who is clutching his side, frantically looking around for something. Where's Izu? The younger of the two says, as he picks his head up from his side, slightly panicking. The pro hero sighed as he pointed with his thumb behind him to the freckled teen who was zip-tying the last villain's feet together before standing up and rushing over to them. I'm here. It's okay, Hitoshi, he says quickly, making his way to the other teen and notice his backpack that Schroeder had only now just noticed, and quickly bringing out a full medkit and lifting up the other's top with a slight blush on his face as he froze at the wound. It was now that Schroeder decided that he should step in, stopping the boy's shaking hand from touching the bullet wound. It's okay, kid, I'll help, he says calmly as he takes the bandages out of what he assumes to be Izuku's hand. What he assumes was Izuku's hand. The boy just nodded quickly as he moved away from the injured boy, Schroeder quickly looking over to the older victim and spoke. You should probably get out of here. I'll take care of the boys, he said with the best smile he could manage, with the gory scene in the corner of his eyes. The woman just nods and he quickly gets up and runs out the alleyway, leaving the man with the two teenagers. So, the pro starts, because all the pieces had fit together a little while ago, but he still wasn't sure how to address it. You're the vigilantes I've been set out to find? He asks softly as he opens up the medkit and rummages through the supplies, seeing both kids flinch at the question. He knows the injured boy's signs to the other. Schroeder lets out a soft chuckle as he sees the imperfect signing. I know you're signing, kids, he says with a small smile as he grabs the tweezers and grabs a bullet out of the boy's side. The kid hisses as Schroeder pulls out the bullet. You can't arrest us, Izuku says as he pulls Schroeder back from the other boy, only just getting the bullet out before he gets dragged away, standing in front of the pro as he growls. The growl wasn't very threatening, as it was full of fear, and his body shook violently. Schroeder sighs as he sits up, face-palming at the boy. You would only get a slap on the wrist at your age, Schroeder says softly, as he pulls his hand away from his face, getting up, trying not to seem threatening. It doesn't matter. You wouldn't help us either way. Izuku kept shouting as he tried to stay on level footing, his body shaking so badly that he could barely stand up at this point, as he took a few steps back to his friend. The injured boy gets up, holding onto Izuku as he stabilizes himself. "It's a race ahead," the boy said quietly as he hugged the other softly from behind. "He could help," he says just loud enough for Shota to hear, as the other shakes his head. No pro would help us," the other said in a whisper as the pro frowns at the two boys. Shota decides that he will help the boys now, and even if he can't, he'll find someone who can. "I will help," Shota says, just firm enough to get the two boys' attention. "What happened to you?" he asks softly as he makes his way to the boys again, taking his goggles off so he could show he wasn't going to use his quirk without them knowing, thinking that if the boys knew who he was, they would know his quirk too. The injured teen's facial expression softens when he reaches up for his mask and starts slowly taking it off. "Hitoshi," Izuku whispers as the other boy Izuku whispers to the other boy as he feels the boy move to take his mask off. "We can trust him, Izuku," Hitoshi said softly as he takes his weight off of the teen, stumbling closer to Shota. From this angle, the way the boy was almost falling with each step, and how his bullet wound was bleeding profusely, Shota walks over to the boy, catching him as he falls. "It's okay, kid. I'll help," he says yet again as Hitoshi relaxes into his arms. Izuku instinctively reaches to take him away from Shota, but freezes when he sees a small smile on Hitoshi's face. Izuku seems to slump, giving up as he takes one step closer, still frowning. But at least he seems a bit more open to Shota's help. "If you can help us, that'll mean a lot. Especially to Hitoshi," the boy emits softly, as he stops in front of Aizawa and the other teen. Shota looks up from the boy in his arms and smiles at Izuku. "You're safe now. I'll help." Shota repeats it himself yet again, standing up from his crouching position and picking up Hitoshi in his arms. Making sure both boys felt safe, Shota kept himself in sight of Izuku of all times, as he held Hitoshi in his arms. Izuku calmed down with each step on the way to UA. Not that the boys knew that, but Shota knew that Recovery Girl would be able to help the injured boy almost instantly. The walk carried on in a slightly awkward silence. The only sounds being made was the boy's heavy breathing and the occasional whimpers from the teen in Shota's arms. "So," Shota said after a few minutes of walking, "what did you need help with?" he asked softly, Hitoshi flinching in his arms slightly at the memories. "We were kidnapped," the teen says softly, as he turned his head to look up at Shota. Shota only nods in confusion as Hitoshi keeps walking. "I don't know how long ago I was kidnapped, but Izuku arrived almost 2 months ago. I was lucky to escape on the first day with him that he arrived, but there were other children." Hitoshi's voice was small as he looked back down and started to lean into the warmth of Shota's chest. The pro nods as he listens to the story, only bringing up his questions once the teen had finished speaking. "So, Izuku was strong enough to escape, but only had enough time to get the two of you out, right?" The teens just nod as Shota thinks to himself quietly. "Why didn't you go to a hero?" the hero asked softly, as the still hidden teen sighed quietly. "No one would take us seriously, even if we did tell a hero. We don't have the best quirks, and would just be seen as two kids playing a prank." Hitoshi snickers bitterly as Izuku reveals that they didn't have good quirks, but Shota just looks indifferent. "And how would you know if the heroes wouldn't take you seriously?" Shota asks as he looks over to the teen, taking off his hoodie and masks, covering taking off the hood of his hoodie and mask covering his face and head. I tried when my mum got killed. I was taken to a cell for a couple of days before they had enough of me and had to make room for other villains. Izuku's voice was soft as he took the last of the hood off, revealing a messy mop of green hair that reached down to his shoulders and his forest green eyes bright forest green eyes that looked like they were holding onto the last string of hope. Shota sighs as he hears this, taking a turn as they started to walk into the forest Yue was held within. It's sad that they did that to you, kid, but know that not everyone hates weak quirks. If you feel like you can't be a hero of your quirk, which is why you have to do this, then try to think of it as an extra tool. Sure, most people have a gun that can fire quick and effectively. But you have an onslaught of knives that can be thrown to disarm the person, whether it be through an injury or through destroying the weapon. You would be able to win a gunfight with a knife. There was a small smile on Shota's face as he spoke, the green-haired teen freezing when he saw the entrance to Yue. Wait, what? Izuku asked to question both the fact that they were at Yue and that this hero implied that he could be a hero too. Shota just laughs at the stunned expression of the teen, not bothering to explain himself further. Shota just scans his badge and walks into Yue with Hitoshi in his hands, Izuku trailing right behind the hero and his comrade. Hitoshi was getting weaker by the second, and Shota knew that he had to get the boy to Recovery Girl's office. He just hoped that the elderly woman would be in later than she normally would, like she said it would be. Chia had told him earlier today that she was going to be staying late and taking care of a student overnight. So hopefully, for the sake of the boy in his arms, the woman would still be taking care of said student. Shota readjusts the hold on Hitoshi, making sure not to hurt him as he stopped at the door and opened it. Granted, with a little struggle, but he still managed to do it without hurting the teen too much. Chia groaned lightly as she woke up from her light slumber as the door creaked open. Ugh, I swear, Nezu, I'm fine. You can go home. Chia cut herself off when she looked up to see Shota Aizawa, a man known for being cold and harsh, holding a teen with a bullet wound in his side. The woman got up immediately as she saw the blood soaking through the teen and onto Shota's hands, barely noticing the other boy next to Shota, only giving the boy a quick nod before taking the injured boy out of Shota's arms, resting him on the bed next to the other student. The green-haired teen looked around anxiously as he watched his best friend being carried away. Izuku was a fan of Recovery Girl, but he was still wary not to get his hopes up too high. He was honestly still afraid of Eraserhead, but since Hitoshi trusted him enough to take his mask off, Izuku would trust him too. The teen walked over to where his friend was, sitting down on the seat beside the bed. Is he going to be okay? Izuku asked softly as he watched Recovery Girl with hawk eyes, keeping Hitoshi in his sights of all time, just to make sure he would be okay. The woman nods as she grabs a small handful of lollies before walking over and handing them to Izuku. She smiles softly before leaning over Hitoshi's body and kissing his cheek, using her quirk on him. He should be better soon, she says gently as she pats Izuku's head, before walking away and giving the boys a little privacy, grabbing Shota by his sleeve and walking away as she walks away and pulls him out the room. What the hell happened to that kid, Shota? She growls out quietly as she keeps the door open to keep an eye on the kids. Shota sighs as he briefly looks over to the vigilantes. Look, the kids are vigilantes. One got hurt while fighting a villain, and they're in trouble, he says bluntly as he takes another glance over at them. Chia looks at him questionably, but she also glances at the vigilantes. Shota continues, not giving the woman a chance to speak. They were kidnapped by villains, and the green-haired boy escaped with the injured one a little over 2 months ago. They have bad experiences with heroes, but the purple kid is basically begging for help. So if we can get him to agree, the other kids should be fine with it too. Chio nodded along with Shoda as Shoda continued to give a rundown of the situation, listening attentively. So, the kids are running away from villains? Recovery Girl asked just to clarify what Shoda was saying. When said hero nods, the pro sighs and walks back into the room. So, her voice was soft but held an air of authority as she spoke to the green-haired teen, freezing in his tracks. Do you still want help with those villains? She asks, her voice a little softer as she walks over to Izuku and Hitoshi. Izuku nods sheepishly as he looks away, but still holds onto Hitoshi's hand. The woman nods in understanding as she rests a small kiss on Izuku's head, making sure to use a little bit of her quirk too, so that hopefully the other teen gets a little rest too. Izuku's eyes instantly start to drop as she plants a kiss on his head, but he tries his hardest not to fall asleep. Chio sighs as she gives him a light hug, her grandmotherly side coming out as she rubs his head softly, hoping it will lull him to sleep. The boy was asleep within a minute, softly running her fingers through his hair. Chio slowly let go to let him rest, letting him rest while holding Hitoshi's hand. So, what's next? Chio asks as Shoda walks up to her. As she walks up to him, making sure to keep an eye on all of her patients. Shoda sighs softly as he answers. We wait till the morning and then we ask Nezu to get on the case and find those other kids. Shoda said simply, making the situation seem a lot less dire than it actually was. Chio just nods as she walks back over to her makeshift bed in the office and lays back down on it, giving Shoda his cue to leave the boys in her care. He nods at the two problem children before walking out of the room and off to finish his patrol. Are we all ready? A strong booming voice asks from outside of the villain's base. The other heroes nod as they get into a fighting stance. There were a lot of heroes on this mission because there were up to 3 children in the space along with villains. Hopefully none of them had been killed yet, but it would be a miracle if they were still alive. Shoda tries to take a deep breath. Shoda takes a deep breath as he waits for All Might to smash through the wall. They had gotten a schedule from Shinso since he had been there almost as long as he could remember. Mixed with Hazuka's talent for analysing villains, they managed to get a solid time to attack the base and hopefully catch all the villains. A smash engulfed Shoda's ears as the number 1 hero smashed through the wall, large and small chunks flying as the wall collapsed. Shoda saw that the inside of the building was a bar, a place that looked exactly like a villain's base would be, as a villain's base would be expected to look like. Some of the walls were cracked, and a lot of the brick underneath the paint was showing, all with vines intertwined into the structure of the building. Shoda makes sure to stay hidden as he uses his quirk on the man with baby blue hair. As the one that had a 5-point disintegration quirk, according to both boys. A dangerous quirk that could turn anything the man touches into dust within a minute, depending on how big the thing he wanted to destroy is. Said villain immediately went on the attack as he reached his hands out to touch the closest hero, which just so happens to be Midnight. As they made their way they made a plan. The plan they had made with the help of the boys was simple: smash through the wall with All Might's strength. Then, while Shoda was erasing the blue-haired man's quirk, Midnight would rush in and put the villain to sleep with her quirk, hopefully putting the unknown amount of villains to sleep while they got the kids out of there. That was how things were supposed to go, but it didn't turn out the way they expected. A man who looked like to be made out of smoke created a purple portal in front of All Might's fist. That was just about to collide with the first villain, making him the portal ended up making All Might punch Shredder in the side. All Might had to close his eyes from the pain, disabling his quirk and giving the first villain a chance to use his own quirk. But thankfully, Shredder recovered before the villain could reach anyone and use his quirk. A distant shout was heard as All Might pulled his arm out of the portal, Shredder moving his attention to the other villain. He had been trying for a few years to get his quirk to work on more than one person for a while now, and it now seemed to be like a good time to try it out. Shredder strained his eyes, begging for them to work with him as he tried begging them to work with him and try not to dry up as he focused. Somewhere from within the battle, he could hear the screaming of his husband from in the distance, using his quirk to stop the villains from coming closer. But Shredder couldn't pay any attention to that as he was doing this. He was so close to grabbing and getting a grip of the other villain's quirk when another scream made itself clear, one of a small child, taking the villain's attention away from the heroes for just a split second, giving Shredder enough time to unlock the usage of his quirk on multiple people. As Shredder continued to use his newfound ability of his quirk, the other heroes made their way inside, and Edshot quickly knocked the villains out, getting to the basement. Shredder followed the other heroes once he was sure that the other villains had been knocked out. His eyes would have teared up if it weren't so dry from using his quirk, freezing when he saw the scene in front of him. 3 bloody children sitting in a room with various limbs taken off and their bodies in a state of malnutrition. It made Shredder so shocked that Shredder was shocked that the children were still alive. Tears running down their faces as All Might and President Mike walked up to them while Recovery Girl made her way to heal all 3 of them. The children were safe. They may not be the same as they were before they got kidnapped, but at least they were alive and on their way to getting better. The children almost fell asleep instantly as Recovery Girl planted kisses on each of them. All Might picked up the two of the children and President Mike picked up the last child. Shredder nodded to his husband as they made their way up to the main floor again when they saw no one there, the villains gone. The room went silent as the heroes started looking around for the missing villains. All Might and President Mike making their way over to the ambulances and past the children inside, making sure they got to the hospital as fast as possible. All for One looked down at his 2 subordinates, sighing as he used one of his many sword quirks to wake them up. Shigaraki groaned as he awoke from his slumber and looked at his sensei. All for One did not let the man speak, silencing him with his hand before speaking as Kurogiri woke up. "You are lucky. You're lucky." He spoke plainly as he glared the best he could without eyes as he continued to speak. "But you've got a lot more training to do. Training starts tomorrow. Be ready." Both men nodded as they made their way to the familiar bedrooms they stayed in while they were training. Extra. Hitoshi cried when he saw the children when he walked into the room. Running over to each of them as fast as he could. They may be more injured than when he last saw them 2 months ago, but he was grateful they were still alive. "I will be a hero," both teens decided as they saw the other victims. They had to. It was their new promise to the world now. Okay, that was a long one. I'm sorry if I stuttered a lot. I'm sure I did. But reading nearly 9,000 words in one go, because yes, I did do it in one attempt and one go, takes a lot out of you. So I'm just going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you all so much for helping me get to 1,000 subscribers. And until next time, make sure to take care of yourself, and I'll see you later. Bye.